Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Beyond Bold. This is your host, Kyla Bolden. Thank you so much for joining me again today. Today we have a really cool guest on the podcast. Her name is Ira. And CEO. She is the founder and CEO of Asan Cup, and I actually met Ira. Like I met a lot of my guests through a entrepreneurship program, the Cartier Women's Initiative, and we hit it off immediately. And I'm really excited for you guys to learn more about her company and just her as a businesswoman. Like she is incredibly smart. I think she's such a savvy businesswoman in the sense that she had a desire to make an impact, which is to eradicate period poverty. And she decided to do it in a way that was not only impact driven, but also sustainable from a business standpoint. So I'm really excited for you to learn more about Era and her company. And let's just get right into the episode. Era, thank you so much for joining me on Beyond Bold. I actually met Era through Cartier, the Cartier Women's Initiative, which is, we've had a few fellows on the podcast, and I'm really excited to have you today. Era is the founder and CEO of Asan Cup, which is a company that is focusing on eradicating period poverty with menstrual cups. So she's definitely going to tell you more about that. But thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much, Kyla. It is so fun to be doing this and to see your face. Yes, Asan, like you said, is a social venture working to end period poverty. The word Asan actually means easy in many languages, in Hindi, Urdu, Persian. So our mission is to make women's lives easy on their period, no matter their income, which country they live in, where they're from. So we designed and patented a super easy to use reusable period cup called the Asan Cup. And it lasts for 10 years. So one cup replaces 2,500 tampons. And because period cups can be a little bit tricky to use, some people are quite scared of them. We really worked hard on the design. So it has a ring that makes it really easy to remove. And it's red, so it never stains or discolors. The material is medical silicone, so it's super soft. And what makes our organization so special is that we have a very interesting business model, which maybe we'll go into, which really
Mhm.
allows women, no matter where they're from, so whether you're, a higher income woman in the UK or hopefully in Canada soon, or whether you're someone living in a rural area, maybe you're a farmer in, sub-Saharan Africa or India, we have programs where you can get the Asan Cup at an affordable price for you.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And I love your mission to make like women's life easier and like your period easy. Easy is something that I've never associated with my period. And you know what? It's unfortunate because, I have friends who used to have like really negative experience in their periods and then they work on it and they're able to actually, not suffer. But a lot of women are suffering during their period. And it's often down to like the products that we're using. And we talk about eradicating period poverty, and definitely in countries where it's hard to get access to like quality menstrual tools or like products rather. But I even think about like in like North America, or I could speak in Canada, a lot of the things on the shelf are really toxic and actually make your period worse. It's really great that you have a product that is not only reusable, so it's sustainable, but also safer to
Yeah,
use.
100%. That is so spot on. So, like most of the commercially available pads and tampons are made from 90% plastic and they contain pesticides. They contain like perfumes. Like, if you've ever like unwrapped a pad or tampon and you get that like weird
Yeah.
smell, that's literally a perfume which should not be anywhere near your,
Mm-hmm.
parts. Um,
Yeah.
they have lots of toxic chemicals in them. They can cause rashes, and these are just things that are so normalized now. And I think the worst part is that manufacturers do not have to put the ingredients on the pack. So with food, for example, like we're so used to seeing like the carbohydrates and the proteins and the ingredients, and we look at what goes into it. You know if your food is ultra processed or if it's organic or whatever. But with pads and tampons, literally, it just says pads and tampons. You have no idea what goes into it. Whereas with the Asan cup, it's one ingredient. Like the entire cup is made from 100% medical silicone, which is a biocompatible material. It has zero plastic, and it's the same material that heart stents and breast implants and like actual like medical components are made out of. And we also have like ISO 13485, which is medical device certification. And it's really sad that, people just don't know what goes into pads and tampons. It's not something that we talk about. But there are so many like medical and scientific studies now that show how bad some of these toxins can be for your body.
And I guess this would be considered like femtech. That industry, it seems like it's not as regulated as it should be. I know I was speaking with somebody that was thinking about going into the femtech industry, and she was like, at first, she was like, well, I won't be able to do this because there's so much rules and regulations. And then when she got into it, she's like, wait, there's not as much regulations around
No,
it as it should
100%.
be.
I completely agree. So, um, with the FDA in the US, and I think in Canada as well, there are some rules, for example, around tampons and menstrual cups and what goes into them. But in the UK and the EU, so we are a UK headquartered company, there are basically no rules about what goes into period products. It's like a general consumer good. You can kind of make it out of anything and sell it. And I think that's quite scary because you need to have guidelines. And I also think it's not just about regulation, it's like about consumer awareness and like
Hmm.
education, like instead of just being told when you're 13 years old and you get a period, like here's a pad, slap it on and that's it. Like all of us are just
Yeah.
take a pad and just don't talk about it. I just think it really needs to be built into our education system now that like, oh my God, there's a whole world of period products out there. There's reusable underwear, there's cups, there's discs, there's tampons, and like this is what they're made out of. This is what the impacts are, and you can try them all. I think that's like there's a long way to go before we're there.
Yeah, there's such a long way to go when it comes to education. And I think about the fact that, people getting their period is sometimes stopping them from work, right? And it's crazy to think about because we think about just like women's, technology in general and how even something like birth control, like the accessibility of birth control and safe abortions has allowed women to actually advance in the workplace a lot more because it used to be like if you had a baby, like you weren't able to work and you there wasn't like maternity leave, all of those things. It would really impact your ability to be a self-sustaining human being, right? But now, like with access to birth control and all those things, us as women have been able to come a lot further. And you would think when it comes to your period, that would be a something that was solved even before all of this, right? But it's still impacting individuals from being able to make a living.
Oh my God, 100%. And I think like the firstly, like over like I think half the world's population, like of all of the like women and girls globally, I think over half of them still don't have access to even basic period products. So that's literally the difference between sitting at home for 5 days when you have your period, using homemade solutions like cloth rags, which you have to scrub clean, which are not very hygienic unless you can like dry them in the sun, which most people can't. And then you're literally missing out on wages. You're missing out on school. Maybe you're missing out on like an important exam. Imagine you have like your SATs or like a really big exam that
Yeah.
determines your future, and you're like, oh, I actually cannot do this because I have my period. How
Hmm.
ridiculous is that? I mean, it's crazy. But then on the other end, even for example, in Europe and North America, you know, it's still not talked about enough. You don't have period products offered in the workplace. You don't have like an open culture where you can work from home or, menstrual leave is still like a very new thing. And some people have like terrible period pain, which actually means that they can't work. So
Yeah.
I think it's crazy to me that it's something that impacts like half the world's population and we just have not solved it.
Absolutely. And yeah, I'm even thinking back to like when I was in college, like tampons are really expensive, right? And I remember like asking a girl in my dorm, I was like out of tampons, and I was like, "Oh, like can I just borrow a few?" And she was like, "These are I like I can't like afford to, like they're too expensive. My period's going to come up." And then when I went to actually go check how expensive they are, I'm like, "Wow, these are actually crazy expensive. And so, it impacts way more people than we think it does. And it's also like not safe to not have enough like period
Yeah,
products. It's really
yeah.
scary. So I'm thinking like this would be like amazing if, when you got to college, they gave you it like in your goodie bag, like a
Right?
Asan Cup and
Oh my
stuff like
God,
that.
yeah.
We get enough water bottles and like a bunch of stuff that we don't need when you're a freshman.
I know.
Um,
That's
yeah,
such a good
but
idea. I should approach some
yeah.
companies, yeah.
No, you should. Okay, yeah, that's a business idea.
Yeah.
Let's go after it. But okay, so take me back to when you started the company because you were working as a consultant in London and you decided to leave that job to go pursue, a more entrepreneurial lifestyle, which I think is definitely always a big jump. Take me through like that moment when you were like, okay, this is what I want to do full time. What happened? What sparked the idea?
Yeah, so I think like many confused graduates, I kind of just went into consulting because it was like a good paycheck and I could be in London with my
Yeah.
friends and my boyfriend and
Wh-
have a nice life.
Era, I don't know if you know this, but I was planning to go into consulting too. And like, I don't know what brainwashes us all to like go into
I
consulting, but
think,
yeah, it was,
oh, sorry, this is so like off going on a tangent, but
no,
I feel
it's
like
fine.
it's like because at university, like we don't even know what career options are there, and it's like
We don't.
banking, consulting, like you just hear all these words and you just go after them, not knowing what they are. Anyway, let's.
Yeah.
So I went into consulting, and honestly, Kyla, from the first day, like I hated it. I hated it. Like I did not like the people, I did not like the work. And I think it's because like I grew up in India and then I moved to the UK for university and doing these like really random projects for these big UK corporates, it just felt very meaningless. Like I had absolutely no connection to the work. I was like trying to sell more phone contracts for Vodafone. Like it just I had no connection to it, and I think I was actually deeply quite unhappy. Like I was just craving my weekends when I could be with my friends or my evenings when I could, go home and do my own thing. And it was just a very unhappy lifestyle I was living, and I knew that I was not content. Like I wanted to do work where every minute of every day felt meaningful to me, not just my evenings and weekends. Um, and then, like, very much on the side of this, I became interested in menstrual health because on a trip home to India, I met a domestic worker, like a cook actually, who was working for my mum, and she had stopped coming to work. Her name was Mary, and my mum was like, "Can you find out why she stopped coming? Is she unwell?" And we found out she wasn't unwell. She literally had these terrible rashes from the poor quality pads that she had like got from her local community. And she showed me the pads, and they were literally like bricks. Like I couldn't believe how bad they were. And I gifted her a period cup, and I explained how it worked. And because I was using one in the UK, and she found it so easy. And then she could work on her period, she could like be active, and she was saving money. And then she immediately was like, "Oh, when you come next, can you give me one for my niece? Can you give me one for my sister?" I was literally traveling to India with like 10 period cups in my suitcase every single time I went to visit my family. And I think it was like all of these things coming together where I was really unhappy in my work. And then I actually quit to do a master's in public policy at the Harvard Kennedy School, which is all about social impact. And then pretty much as soon as I started my master's, I also was like thinking very much about this work in menstrual health. And I told a professor about the work I was doing, and he like helped me make a business model. And then I literally hired an engineer at Harvard and made the product.
Oh, wow. So it just all came together really perfectly. And I also love how you starting this company came from something that like you experienced in the real life. Okay, so you went to go get your master's in public policy, and then it just really all came together from there. So once you graduated, did you already start working on the designs when you were still a student, or
Yeah.
was it after you
So I
graduated?
think like the amazing thing about being in like a college campus is that you get so many resources for free. So I
Mm-hmm.
collaborated with an engineer, and there's this thing called the Harvard Innovation Lab that has like 3D printers and like access to like legal support and all of the things you actually need to make a product. So I actually made the like prototypes for the product there. And then once I graduated, that's when I like contacted a manufacturer to make like the more medical material samples. And then I actually moved straight to India because my interest was like will this work in rural communities? Like I was doing this to
Yeah.
women who could not access any kind of period care. And then I learned quite quickly that like they were like the adopt like in South India where I was distributing the cups, the adoption was amazing. It was literally like spreading like wildfire. Like one woman would tell another woman,
Mm.
and the adoption was amazing. But they just literally couldn't afford it at the cost price.
Yeah.
And that's when I had to kind of like pause and rethink. And I had like a lot of friends in my user trials in the US and the UK who were like, you know, we've been using menstrual cups and this Asan cup is so much better. Like we would buy this for sure. And that's when I thought, okay, maybe we can have like some kind of cross subsidy or like an interesting business model where we sell at a profit for people who can afford it, but we can give it for free or maybe at cost price for people who can't afford it. And that's how the business model developed. So like half of it is selling at a profit directly to consumers, and then the other half is like partnering with nonprofits, with schools, with factories, for example, that have female workers, and they're like, you know, maybe the workplace will sponsor it, but we can give it at a very, very subsidized cost.
Yeah. And I think that's something that a lot of social entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs that are focused on impact, like a problem that they come across. Like, I know, even though with me, we were really focused on helping increase digital literacy in communities that like were under resourced and didn't have access to like computer science classes and etc. But we soon realized that a lot of those communities that don't necessarily have the funds in order to pay for those classes, especially the parents. So then what we ended up doing is like partnering with schools and etc. So like the end user gets it for free, and then those who can pay. But like that is a really common problem, and I think that often stops a lot of people from social entrepreneurship and makes it them go just straight to the nonprofit sector, which is very valuable in itself, but it's very different than running, like a commercial business. So tell me a little bit more, because you were able to get adoption when it came to the people that you were giving it to in India. But then I assume that like adoption, like getting people to adopt it when it came to you back home in London was probably a very different story. So how did you then get so many users over here so then you could subsidize
Yeah.
those users who can't afford it?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's weird because maybe you kind of have this as well, because you also have like direct to consumer and B2B, right?
Yeah,
But like they're so different. It's kind of like
different.
two businesses sitting inside one business.
Hmm.
So the direct to consumer business is like it's very different. It functions on Shopify, on Amazon. You know, people find us online. And we sell in the UK, Europe, and also in India, because the interesting thing about India's market is like it's so big and so segmented.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, kind of like the US. I think you have like a high income segment who can totally afford
Hmm.
it at a high price. And then obviously you have a very big low income segment as well. So with the direct to consumer, I think one thing we are lucky with is like we're kind of riding this wave of more awareness and more search for reusable menstrual products. Kind of going back to our conversation about like the toxins in pads and tampons, like this is a topic, especially after COVID, that people are becoming more aware of. So on Google and on Amazon, there's like a lot of like the searches for menstrual cups are like doubling, I think like every year or something. So we have like really good search engine optimization. That's a bit geeky. SEO strategies. If someone is searching for a menstrual cup, we make sure that they find us and they know that like ours is the easiest one to use. But apart from that, we also do like a lot of education campaigns. Like our Instagram is completely dedicated to like really educating consumers on their bodies, on sustainability, on the planet, like, and also on exactly how cups work, how to insert it, how to remove it. So we also do a lot of like educational campaigns to grow awareness. And I think that like I think what's really cool about Asan is like the product, the period cup is identical, whether you're like a entrepreneur, a lawyer living in London or Toronto, or whether you are, you know, a school girl in like Malawi. It's the same product. And even in our like marketing and messaging, we try to like close that gap. So even when we do like sell to people in the UK, we try to tell that story, like this is where the profits are being redistributed, you know, this is what our brand stands for. It's kind of almost like we're connecting these women globally.
Yeah. And so you talked about how, direct to consumer and B2B is very different. They're both sitting inside, this one company. There's definitely a lot of thoughts on you should just be one or the other. But I really think when you have an impact focused business, you definitely sometimes need to be both. And eventually you could branch out. And it's also good from like a diversification aspect as well too. If like you have a large B2B customer and then for whatever reason they can't renew, it's not like you're depending just on B2B. You have both sides of the coin. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a challenge because I feel like I don't know what you think. A lot of people say like just focus on one thing and become good at
Yes.
it. And I feel like we are already multiple business models and multiple markets, so we're like very diversified. Um, but I agree with what you're saying because the D2C revenue is the same every month, or like it grows by a certain percentage every month. But then the B2B
Hmm.
revenue is like 1 month you sell like 20,000 Asan cups, and then 1 month you literally sell nothing because B2B is
Hmm.
like the sales cycle functions so differently, and that's why I think that you do need both.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's smart. And I think like you definitely, I see in like the startup world, you have like startup advice and you have business advice, right? And I find like the traditional business advice, no one's going to really fault you from having multiple lines of revenue. Like that's just like duh. But then when you have like the startup advice, startups like they try to, I find, model everything on SaaS and like everyone's not a SaaS company, right? So like it's not going to work for me. But like they're like, no, you should only focus on that one thing. And
Yeah.
I actually like having two.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I also think like surely every founder is so different and you kind of
Yeah.
like lean into your skills and what you're good at. And maybe the way some
Hmm.
founders work is like hyper focus on one market, one channel and growing it. And maybe the way you and I work is more actually no, like diversify, try different strategies and then start expanding when you see things working, right?
Yeah. You have to do what works right for you. And let's talk about maybe funding a bit, right? So, I know like in the femtech space, it's interesting because a lot of the people, or just really in any startup space, a lot of people that are distributing the funds are not women. So, the fact that like you might have to go to somebody who does not get a period and explain this to them is quite difficult. And I even find myself like when I first started raising capital, we were more focused on like we were branching out from computer education, but very much focused on computer education, computer science for young kids. And I remember speaking with a funder, a VC in Silicon Valley, and he was like, "Well, actually, like at my child's school, they say like no computers. They really don't need to learn how to code until they're adults." And my daughter didn't learn coding until like she went to university, and now she like works for like Deloitte or something like that. And I was thinking to him, I was like, well, your daughter was able to have really, really great education and then also understand that there were tech jobs out there. And the average kid that, was not exposed to computer science isn't going to go to university and then be like, I want to do computer science, especially if they're on scholarship. I mean, the thing about like going into coding or like any like technical field, science field in university is that like you're often kind of guaranteed a bad grade for those intro subjects. So somebody who's on scholarship is not going to be like, let me sacrifice my scholarship so I could go study this thing that I've never heard about, right? That doesn't make sense. But there was a disconnect between who I was going for funding, them not understanding why it's so important to introduce students at a young age. So, kind of similar to you, that I'm sure the people that you're going to for funding, some of them might not have experienced the period or even heard of period poverty. So, how do you make that like disconnect? And how was that process for you?
Oh my God, that is so interesting. Because you're so right, because funders, by the nature of being funders, are wealthy, and wealthy people
Yeah.
do not have experienced either educational struggles or period poverty, right?
Yeah.
No, it's so true. So I think I've been incredibly lucky in my investors. It's a mix of men and women, but like the common theme I find in my male investors, and especially like two who are on my advisory board and who are like the most amazing investors ever, they both have two daughters. And they're like, they
Hmm.
both are, I think, in like all female families. I know that sounds really weird, but I think it's like the influence of being surrounded by women. And I've had conversations with some of these investors about like buying period products for their daughters or like helping their daughters through their periods. And I think, look, not every man is gonna do that for their kids,
Mhm.
but I think when it comes to raising funding, you really have to like weed through a lot of nonsense until you can
Yes.
find someone who really like fits your business and your mission. And the way I did that was being like radically and brutally honest with investors. So I didn't have like a ridiculous business plan with like, you know, unicorn growth or like hockey stick growth or like a crazy exit. I was super honest. I was like, this will be profitable, it will be financially sustainable, and it will transform the lives of like hundreds of thousands of women and girls. But I did not say like, invest in me and you're going to be a billionaire tomorrow. Because to be honest, most of the people who fund Asan are already really rich. Like they don't
Yeah.
need Asan to take them to like Elon Musk levels of rich, right? Like if you want to be
Mhm.
Elon Musk levels of rich, you're going to invest in a very different company. You're not going to invest in a social venture that's ending period poverty. But I think by being like very radically honest, it was like very quickly the VCs or like the investors who were only interested in the financial returns, they just didn't really approach us and they knew it wasn't a good fit. And that honesty kind of led me to meet actually through like LinkedIn and through like friends of friends or
Yeah.
networks, it led me to meet like a handful of like golden investors who I absolutely love, and many of them are on my advisory board now.
Yeah, I heard two things. So you were really authentic. Well, I heard many things, but like the things that stood out were like you're really like honest about and authentic about like what you wanted to do and honest about what you guys think you could do as far as like growth and all of that. But then also you understood the psychology of the person who you were, pitching to, which I think is really important. And like, yes, although like a lot of people that you're typically pitching to, any founder, are not poor, also realizing that some of them are not rich as well. So you have to, your funders seem like they might have been like already successful. So they're not like looking for that like unicorn. While, a lot of people like VC, like to be a venture capitalist, right? Yes, you do have some, the more traditional ones that have like, had really successful careers, but others might just be just starting out or really are really just solely managing other people's money and have not had any business or like entrepreneurial experience. So that funder, kind of like you have angel investors like that. Somebody might have an extra $10,000 to invest in your company, but that might be the only $10,000 they have to invest.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, that's going to be so much more stressful for you, and they're going to be banking on you to make them rich. Fair, but like that's not like a great working relationship. And I see so many like founders, especially like female founders, because there is a scarcity mindset. And statistically, we're not funded as much, right? So it's warranted. So they take money from individuals who are banking on them to make them rich and only them. And that's just not a good working environment.
No, it's not. And I think like like angel investors should know that like I think it's
But yeah, they should.
yeah, it's like 1 in 10 investments that give a very significant return. So you need to invest
Hmm.
in a lot of companies, and you can never pressure like any one founder to, you know, make you that overnight success. Um,
Hmm.
I think like I thought really critically about like what I could offer investors, because I really I hate this narrative of like this power dynamic where like founders
Yeah.
are like begging for money, and like female founders are so deprived of money, and then there are these like amazing investors who are so powerful. I hate it. And
It's so
so
toxic.
toxic. I'm sorry, but like we are on an equal plane, and this is a transaction, you know? You get
Yes.
something from an investor, you're giving them something back. It's a transaction, and you need to think about what you're offering in return. And for me,
Hmm.
I was like, I will offer like a reasonable financial return, like a solid investment, but I will offer so much more than that. I will offer, you knowing that like you are like transforming the lives of women and girls across the world in a financially
Yes.
sustainable way. Like you're not just giving a grant to charity where 1 year later it's disappeared and you have to give another grant. No, it's a one-time
Exactly.
investment that is consistently paying off. you know, my investors also like they have so much excitement around like being involved in the company, right? Like they get to
Hmm.
work with me and my team, which is a team of amazing, like cool women. They get to be part of the Asan story, which I think is an amazing story. So, I feel like I'm giving them a lot in return, both in terms of engaging with the company, making a difference in the world, and financial returns. And like I'm very honest about that. So it's I really think it's like an equal relationship that we need to have with investors instead of it being like, oh my God, I'm begging for money.
Absolutely. It's so important to remember that. And honestly, for the most part, unless you're giving away over 50% of your company, which you're most likely not in the beginning, like they own a small percentage of your company too. Like so it's not there, it's no reason for you to be like, oh, they're up here and I'm down here. Like, no, you didn't get investor to have a boss, right? You got investor to like more so be able to pursue your mission, make it bigger, etc., move quicker. So yeah, I think that's so important
Yeah,
to remember.
totally. And like even with like boards, like I find it so confusing when people want like a lot of people want you to pay them to be on your advisory board, whereas I'm like, no, you can invest in my company and pay me, and then I will invite you to
Yeah.
my advisory board. So I think it's just really as founders, like it's and female founders, like it's really important to like know your self-worth and
Yeah.
think of yourself as absolutely equal to everyone.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I have a few more questions left, like two questions. So the first one is if you were to give somebody advice who was starting out in the femtech space, what will be the one big piece of advice you would give them? And this is like maybe a little bit more industry specific. So it could be anything from like encouraging piece of advice or something more technical. What would that one piece of advice be that you wish you would have
Yeah.
known?
My advice to Femtech founders is to focus on like an actual problem because
Hmm.
I think there's a lot of like innovation at the margins for the like 0.1%. For example, putting a chip in a menstrual cup to tell you your body temperature. Something like
Hmm.
that is innovating for the 0.001%. Maybe you'll get a tech valuation, or maybe you can claim it's an AI company. But I just don't think it's a problem faced by many people. Where
Hmm.
I feel like there are so like when it comes to things like period pain, menopause, maternity, there are so many just real problems that need solving and also that don't just impact this 0.1%, but maybe impact kind of to what we said earlier about different income groups, right? Like I feel like there's so much innovation just happening for the very, very top, but what about everybody else in society who needs these solutions more than anyone? So, yeah, think about a real problem and think about a problem
Yeah.
that impacts day-to-day people, not just the
Hmm.
0.1% of women.
That's so important. And I mean, even from just like a fundraising perspective, you want to have a big total addressable market, right? And if like only like 1% of the people can use your product, that's kind of hard, right? So I think that's incredible advice. Okay, I actually have this will actually be the last two questions. The second, like part two of this question is just advice for female founders in general. So if you had to put like a billboard outside of like South by Southwest or like one of those big startup conferences or in Silicon Valley, like what would that billboard say? What do you want to tell them?
Y- Being a female in a male-dominated space is a superpower. Use it to your advantage.
Oh, let's go into that a bit. Why? Like, I mean, I mean, I love being a woman, so like,
Yeah.
I think it's a superpower in general. But we're often told that it's not
I think
all the time,
especially
every day.
especially if you're innovating for a consumer that you understand. So for example, if obviously for me I'm in femtech, so it's like really obvious that I have an understanding of the product and the market that like a male investor or a man would never have. So I think
Hmm.
like lean into like all the advantages that you have as a woman. And if you're to be honest, like being an immigrant founder or a minority founder or a woman founder, like I shout about it from the rooftops because I'm super
Yeah,
proud about it. And I think that if you really like own who you are, then people listen and you get
yeah.
amazing opportunities out of it, like the Cartier opportunity that you and I both.
Hmm.
So yeah, I just really lean into being a female founder. I think it's a
I
super,
love that.
yeah.
I love that. That's really good advice. Okay, last question, and it's kind of a fun question. So it's kind of taken from the question, if you have dinner with anyone dead or alive, who would that be? But it has a little spin on it for Beyond Bold. So we are obviously a startup podcast. We talk to many founders, and I often think about like assembling a board for like meet my life, like Kyla, like who would be on Era's like advisory board that will give you, business advice, that will give you, life advice. And so if you have to pick somebody, try picking somebody who is like a celebrity or like, somebody that other people will know. Who would that be?
I feel like it would be like a high performance athlete,
Mm,
Serena Williams, someone who is like,
yes.
here's how you survive completely under pressure. And like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I love that. She'll be awesome. And she's an investor too. So like
Yeah.
maybe that's like not even that far off. Well, Eric, thank you so much for joining me on Beyond Bold. If people want to find you and learn more about your company and get your products, like where could they find you?
Yeah, so we are at Asan Cup. That's ASANCUP, asancup.com or Asan Cup on Instagram or TikTok. Yeah, we'd love to connect.
Awesome, awesome. And I'll put all of that in the show notes as well too. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Kyla.